The cafeteria at Hargrove Defense Contractors was never a quiet place. 400 employees, 3 lunch shifts, 1 long room that smelled like reheated coffee and old ambition. But on a Tuesday in November, at exactly 12:14 p.m., the noise stopped. Not gradually, all at once, like someone had pulled the plug on the entire building. What caused that silence was a sound most people had never heard before in a workplace. The sound of food tray being slapped out of a man's hands. Hard, deliberately, in front of everyone. The tray hit the floor with a crash that echoed off every wall. Rice and chicken scattered across the tile. A plastic cup of water rolled slowly toward the center of the room and stopped. And the man it happened to, the man sitting alone at the corner table, the man who had been quietly eating his lunch and reading a worn paperback novel, just looked down at the mess. He didn't stand up. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked down at the floor, then slowly looked up, and what people who were there that day would later describe wasn't anger on his face. It was something quieter than anger, something that in hindsight was far more dangerous. The man who slapped that tray was named Derek Paulson, 34 years old, senior project coordinator, 6'2", loud laugh, expensive watch. The man whose tray hit the floor was named Marcus Webb, 51 years old, new facilities consultant, average height, quiet, had worked at Hargrove for exactly 9 days. Nobody in that cafeteria knew who Marcus Webb really was. Nobody except one person, a 22-year-old cafeteria worker named Destiny Charles, standing behind the serving counter with a ladle in one hand and her phone in the other. She had pressed record 11 seconds before the tray hit the floor. She didn't know why she did it. She just had a feeling. That feeling was about to change everything. Marcus Webb had woken up that Monday morning the same way he had woken up every morning for the past 3 years. Before sunrise. No alarm. He sat on the edge of his bed in the dark, rolled his shoulders twice, and spent 60 seconds doing nothing except breathing. His apartment was simple. A single bedroom in a mid-range complex 20 minutes outside the city. Bookshelves on every wall. A folded American flag in a glass case above the desk. A framed photograph, the only photograph in the entire apartment, of 12 men standing in desert sand, squinting against the sun, arms around each other. Marcus was third from the left. He looked younger, harder, like the weight he carried then was distributed differently than it was now. He made coffee. He read for 40 minutes. He ironed his clothes with the kind of precision that suggested ironing was not a chore for him, but a habit so deep it had become ritual. He was not a man who talked about himself. His new colleagues at Hargrove had already noticed this. 9 days in, and most of them knew almost nothing about him. He ate alone not because he was unfriendly. He smiled when spoken to, held doors, remembered names, but because he seemed genuinely comfortable in his own silence. What they saw was a quiet, unremarkable man in his 50s doing an unremarkable facilities consulting job. What they didn't see was the 31 years that came before it. They didn't know about the Nevada desert. They didn't know about the program so classified that its graduates weren't allowed to name it at cocktail parties. They didn't know that the 12 men in that photograph had gone on to become some of the most decorated special operators in American military history. And they especially didn't know that Marcus Webb had not been one of those operators. He had been something rarer. He had been the man who made them. For 2 decades, Marcus had served as a senior development instructor inside the most demanding special operations training pipeline in the world. He didn't just train Navy SEALs. He trained the instructors who trained Navy SEALs. He built the curriculum. He designed the psychological endurance tests. He decided who had what it took and who didn't. He had looked into the eyes of thousands of men attempting to become the hardest warriors on the planet. He had broken most of them, not out of cruelty, but out of necessity, and rebuilt a select few into something extraordinary. And then, 3 years ago, quietly and without ceremony, he had retired. He had told no one at Hargrove any of this. It was not modesty that kept him quiet. It was discipline. Marcus Webb did not define himself by what he had done. He defined himself by how he acted right now, in this moment, in this room, with this person in front of him. That philosophy was about to be tested in a cafeteria in front of 400 witnesses. And somewhere behind a serving counter, Destiny Charles had just picked up her phone. Derek Paulson had a laugh that arrived before he did. You could hear him coming down the hallway 20 seconds before he appeared. That big, rolling laugh that he used like a tool, the way some men use expensive cars or firm handshakes. He was not stupid. That was important to understand. Stupid bullies are manageable. They're predictable. They have limits. Derek Paulson was smart, socially fluent, and had spent 15 years learning exactly how much he could take from people before they pushed back. He had run the social architecture of Hargrove's fourth floor like a silent kingdom. The people who laughed with him were protected. The people who didn't were eventually nudged out, written up for minor infractions, or simply made so uncomfortable they transferred or resigned. 3 managers had come and gone on the fourth floor in 2 years. Derek was still there. He noticed Marcus on day 1. Not because Marcus had done anything wrong, but because Marcus hadn't done the thing Derek required from new people. He hadn't acknowledged Derek's position. No deference. No laughter at Derek's jokes. No instinctive reading of the room that would have told any socially aware person, this man is the one to impress. Marcus had simply nodded politely and gone back to his work. That nod had been living in Derek's chest for 9 days like a splinter. On Tuesday, November 14th, Derek walked into the cafeteria with 2 of his regular lunch companions, a young project analyst named Cody, who laughed too easily, and a mid-level manager named Phil, who had long ago decided that proximity to Derek was safer than distance. Marcus was at the corner table, alone, tray of food, paperback novel. Derek said something to Cody. Cody laughed. Derek changed direction. Destiny, standing behind the serving counter 40 feet away, saw the change in trajectory. She couldn't have explained why her hand moved to her phone. Later, she would say it was the same instinct that makes you grab a wall when the floor shifts. She pressed record. Derek stopped at Marcus's table. "You're in my spot," he said. Marcus looked up from his book, looked at the empty cafeteria stretching in all directions. "I don't see your name on it," Marcus said. His voice was even, not aggressive, just factual. Something flickered in Derek's eyes. "That's funny," Derek said. "New guys got jokes." He looked back at Cody and Phil. They smiled on cue. Then Derek looked back at Marcus, and the smile dropped. "I'm not joking," he said. Marcus held eye contact for a moment. Then he looked back down at his book. That was the moment Derek decided to do it. He reached down, gripped the edge of the tray with both hands, and slapped it sideways off the table. The crash was enormous in the quiet room. Rice chicken, the plastic cup, everything scattered. The entire cafeteria went silent. Marcus did not flinch. He looked at the food on the floor. Then he looked up at Derek, and his face showed something that every person in that room would try to describe differently over the next 3 days. Some said he looked sad. Some said he looked disappointed. Not at Derek, but for him, the way a doctor looks at an x-ray that confirms what they already feared. One woman, a data analyst named Rhonda, who had been eating 3 tables away, would tell her husband that night, "It was the scariest face I've ever seen." Not because it was angry, because it wasn't. Derek filled the silence. "Clean it up," he said. He walked away. Cody and Phil followed. The cafeteria noise slowly, awkwardly returned. Marcus sat still for a long moment. Then he bent down, quietly collected the scattered food in the rolling cup, placed them back on the tray, and carried it to the trash. He returned to his table. He picked his book back up. He turned the page. And Destiny Charles, behind the counter, slowly lowered her phone. The video was 44 seconds long. She had no idea what to do with it. She had no idea what was about to do to her. Destiny didn't post a video that night. She sat in her car in the Hargrove parking lot at 4:47 p.m. and watched it 11 times. Something was bothering her, and she couldn't name it. It wasn't the tray. It wasn't Derek's cruelty, which was ugly but not surprising. She had watched him operate for 2 years and had learned to keep her head down and her opinions to herself. It was Marcus. Specifically, it was Marcus's hands. She rewound the moment the tray hit the floor and watched his hands. They hadn't gripped the table. They hadn't balled into fists. They had rested flat on the surface, completely still, with the relaxed, deliberate stillness of someone who had trained themselves not to react. Not someone suppressing a reaction. Someone who had eliminated the reaction entirely. Destiny had grown up around her uncle Calvin, who had done 2 tours in Iraq and come back different. She knew what military stillness looked like. It wasn't the same as civilian stillness. It had a different quality, like the surface of deep water. Marcus had that quality. She texted her friend Janelle, "You ever see a video where something is clearly missing from the story?" Janelle replied, "What do you mean?" Destiny didn't answer. Instead, she opened Google and typed, "Marcus Webb Facilities Consultant." Nothing. She tried, "Marcus Webb Military." Still nothing that matched. Then, almost on instinct, she tried, "Marcus Webb Navy SEAL Instructor." The third result stopped her cold. It was a 7-year-old PDF, a government training conference agenda from 2017. Buried on page 11, in a list of panelists discussing special operations training methodology, was a name, Marcus D. Webb, Senior Development Cadre, Naval Special Warfare Training Command. Destiny stared at the screen. She looked at the 44-second video again. She looked at his hands again. Then she looked at Derek Paulson walking away, laughing, completely convinced he had won. Her hands were shaking slightly when she finally started the car. She drove home. She did not post a video that night, but she screenshotted the PDF, and she sent it to no one. Not yet, because she had just realized that the man Derek Paulson had humiliated in front of 400 people was not who anyone thought he was. And whoever he really was, he hadn't said a single word in his own defense. That scared her more than anything else. Derek Paulson had been doing this long enough to know that silence after a public move was never a good sign. By Wednesday morning, the cafeteria incident had traveled through Hargrove the way all uncomfortable workplace moments travel, in hushed tones, in Slack channels, in the careful language people use when they want to talk about something without being caught talking about it. Most of what he heard was what he expected. Nervous laughter. A few impressed comments from people who owed him. The usual social math that followed a show of dominance. But there was something else underneath it. A few people weren't talking at all. Rhonda from Data Analytics had not made eye contact with Derek once since Tuesday. Phil, reliable, deferential Phil, had been unusually quiet in the morning stand-up. And when Derek had passed the cafeteria counter at breakfast, the young woman who worked there had turned her back before he reached the register. He didn't know her name. He made a note to find it out. By 10 a.m. Wednesday, Derek had gone to HR, not to confess, to preempt. He sat across from Patricia Huang, Hargrove's head of employee relations, and told his version of the story with the practiced ease of someone who had done this before. Marcus Webb has been creating a hostile environment on the 4th floor, he said. He refuses to communicate with the team. He ignored direct requests during Tuesday's lunch coordination. I had a client lunch schedule for that table, and he wouldn't move. When I tried to address it, he became verbally threatening. Patricia wrote things down. Derek continued, "I'm not trying to cause problems. I'm trying to protect the team culture we've spent years building here. I have witnesses who can confirm the interaction." He meant Cody and Phil. Cody would say whatever Derek told him to. Phil would say whatever caused the least disruption to his own career. Patricia told Derek she would look into it. By noon Wednesday, Marcus Webb had been called into a preliminary HR meeting. He sat across from Patricia Huang and listened to a summary of Derek's complaint. When she finished, Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Is there anything you'd like to say in response?" Patricia asked. "No," Marcus said. Patricia looked up from her notes. "Mr. Webb, this is your opportunity to—" "I understand," Marcus said. "I don't have anything to add." He stood, thanked her for her time, and left. Patricia sat alone in her office for a long moment after he left, pen still hovering over the page. In 22 years of HR work, she had seen 2 kinds of people respond to false accusations. Those who protested loudly, defensively, desperately, and those who didn't, the ones who didn't scare her. Not because they were dangerous, because they were always about to prove something. Meanwhile, Derek returned to the 4th floor feeling better than he had all week. He stopped by Cody's desk. "Patricia's handling it," he said. "Webb will probably be reassigned or let go by Friday." New consultants on probation don't survive HR flags. Cody nodded. You think he'll push back? Derek shook his head. Guys like that never do. They sit there and take it, and then they leave. That's what they do. He believed this. He had seen it happen 8 times in 15 years. It was going to happen again. At 4:30 p.m. Wednesday, Destiny Charles clocked out her cafeteria shift and sat in her car with her phone. She had spent all day thinking. She pulled up the 44-second video. She pulled up the screenshot of the 2017 conference PDF. She thought about Marcus, sitting in Patricia's office, saying nothing. She thought about Derek, somewhere upstairs, convinced he had already won. And then she opened her Instagram and posted the video. No caption, no explanation, just the 44 seconds. She turned off her phone's notification sound, dropped in her bag, and drove home. By the time she got there, the video had 4,000 views. By the time she fell asleep, it had 340,000. The comment appeared at 2:17 a.m. Thursday morning. The account was 6 years old. No profile picture. 11 followers. The username was at ghost___grinder. The comment said 4 words. You picked the wrong man. By 6 a.m., that comment had 1,400 likes. By 7 a.m., it had been screenshotted and shared to 3 separate Reddit threads, 2 Facebook groups for military veterans, and 1 private Discord server with 11,000 members. Nobody knew who at ghost___the_grinder was. But the people who knew. Within an hour, 7 more accounts had appeared in the comment section. All of them old accounts. All of them sparse. All of them with the quiet, undecorated social media presence of people who had spent careers being deliberately invisible. The comments were cryptic, almost coded. Quiet water runs deep. I trained under someone who trained under him. You have no idea. The mountain doesn't move for the wind. Then at 9:15 a.m. Thursday, a verified account appeared. The name was James Hawkins, former Command Master Chief, Naval Special Warfare. A name that anyone in the special operations community would have recognized immediately. His comment was 4 sentences. I know this man. I will not say what I know publicly. But to whoever did this, understand that you have made a decision whose consequences you cannot see yet. That's all. The video crossed 1 million views at 9:47 a.m. Destiny's phone had not stopped vibrating since she woke up. She sat on her bed reading the comments with the focused intensity of someone trying to understand a language they almost spoke. At 10:30 a.m., a direct message arrived. The account was private. No public posts. But the profile bio said, Naval Special Warfare at 26 years. The message said, are you the one who filmed this? Don't answer publicly. I need to speak with you. Destiny stared at it for a long time. Then she typed back, who are you? The reply came in 40 seconds. My name is Thomas Reed. I served under Marcus Webb for 4 years. He was the best man I've ever known. And I've been watching what's happening to him for the last 12 hours. And I have information that the public doesn't have. Are you willing to hear it? Destiny's heart was hammering. She typed, yes. Thomas Reed's next message was not short. He explained that Marcus Webb had not simply been a training instructor. He had run a program so demanding, so carefully constructed, that graduates referred to it internally as the second selection, a final psychological and physical crucible that came after official SEAL training and winnowed the graduating class a second time. Of the men who entered that program, fewer than 30% completed it. Marcus had designed it. Marcus had run it. And Marcus had personally mentored some of the most accomplished operators of the modern era. He had never sought credit. He had never given a single interview. He had a standing personal rule. What happens in the grinder stays in the grinder. And then Thomas Reed said the thing that made Destiny's breath catch. He also saved my life. Not in combat. In the second year of training, I was about to quit. Not because I couldn't do it physically. Because I was falling apart mentally and I thought I was alone. Marcus found me at 2 a.m. sitting outside the barracks, and he sat with me for 3 hours. He never told anyone. I have never publicly talked about it. But whoever that man on the video is, that bully, he needs to understand what he put his hands on. Destiny read it twice. Then she called Thomas Reed. They talked for 2 hours. By the time she hung up, she had a plan. Thomas Reed had served in the Navy for 26 years and had learned exactly one thing about investigations. The evidence that matters is never the evidence people know about. He told Destiny this on their call, and she wrote it down. By Thursday afternoon, 3 things were happening simultaneously. First, the video had crossed 4 million views and was being covered by military veteran YouTube channels, Twitter/X military community accounts, and 2 mid-sized news outlets who were still trying to verify who Marcus Webb actually was. Second, Derek Paulson had hired an attorney. His name was Grant Ellery, 48 years old, corporate defense specialist. He had received Derek's call at 8 a.m. Thursday, and within 2 hours had sent a cease and desist letter to Destiny's Instagram account, demanding the video be removed on the grounds that it had been recorded without consent in a private workplace and was being used to defame his client. Derek had also gone back to Patricia Huang and escalated. He was now formally requesting that Marcus Webb be terminated, citing workplace disruption caused by Webb's associations and online behavior, as if Marcus had posted the video himself. Patricia Huang sat at her office at 2 p.m. Thursday with 3 different folders open and a particular exhausted expression of someone who had just realized that whatever she decided next was going to appear in a news article. Third, Thomas Reed had started making calls. He began with someone he hadn't spoken to in 4 years, a woman named Colonel Adrienne Solis, now retired, who had overseen administrative records for Naval Special Warfare Training Command during the years Marcus had run his program. Thomas called her at noon. "Adrienne," he said, "I need Marcus's service record. The parts that are declassified. I need it today." There was a pause on the line. "This is about that video," she said. "Yes." Another pause. Longer. "I saw the comments," she said. "I saw Hawk's comment." "Adrienne." "I already pulled it," she said. "I pulled it at 7 this morning. I've been waiting for someone to call." The record was 31 pages long. Thomas forwarded it to Destiny at 3:15 p.m. She read it at the cafeteria supply table during her break. Phone screen brightness turned all the way down, hand over her mouth for most of it. The record was technical and bureaucratic, and dry in a way all government documents are dry. But even through the formal language, what it described was extraordinary. 31 years of service, 18 commendations, 3 classified operations whose details were redacted, but whose outcome notes contained phrases like significant strategic impact and prevent a potential mass casualty event. And then a section near the end titled simply Training Legacy. The section listed by name 37 individuals that Marcus Webb had directly mentored through the advanced selection program. It listed their subsequent assignments, their ranks achieved, their commendations. Destiny recognized none of the names. But in the margin of that section, handwritten in blue ink by someone who had clearly read this document before, were 3 words. "He made us." Destiny photographed the page. Then she called Thomas back. "Who wrote in the margin?" she asked. Thomas was quiet for a moment. "Admiral Franklin Cole," he said, "current Deputy Chief of Naval Operations." Destiny sat very still. "He wrote in the margin of Marcus's service record?" "He keeps a personal copy," Thomas said. "He's had one since he completed the program in 2003. He was in the first class Marcus ever ran." Destiny looked at the photograph of the handwritten words. "He made us." She thought about Marcus, sitting in Patricia Huang's office, saying he had nothing to add. She thought about Derek Paulson upstairs on the 4th floor, telling Cody that men like Marcus always just leave. She thought about the cease and desist letter sitting in her Instagram notifications. Then she thought about what Thomas Reed had told her at the end of their call. Marcus knows exactly what's happening. He's watching all of it, and he's choosing not to act. That's the most Marcus thing I've ever heard. But Destiny, someone else needs to act, because he won't do it for himself. She opened her phone. She called a journalist. The journalist's name was Priya Anand. She wrote for a mid-sized digital publication called The American Record. Not the biggest outlet in the country, but respected, fact-checked, and with military readership that punched well above its circulation numbers. She had been following the video since Thursday morning. When Destiny called her at 4 p.m. Thursday, Priya had already drafted the opening paragraph of 3 different versions of the story, waiting to see which direction the facts would take her. She listened to everything Destiny said. She asked for the service record. She asked for Thomas Reed's contact information. And she asked one more question. Has Marcus Webb said anything to anyone about any of this? Destiny hesitated. Not that I know of. Priya was quiet. Can you get me to him? Destiny knocked on the door of Marcus's 4th floor office at 4:47 p.m. Thursday. She had never spoken to him directly before. She had served him lunch twice, and he had said, "Thank you," both times, which in her experience already put him in the top 15% of people she served. She knocked. "Come in," he said. She opened the door. Marcus was at his desk, working, reading glasses on, a stack of building maintenance reports in front of him. He looked up, recognized her from the cafeteria, and waited. "I'm Destiny," she said. "I filmed the video." A pause. "I know," he said. She had expected. She didn't know what she had expected. Surprise. Emotion. Something. He just waited. "There's a journalist," Destiny said. "She has your service record. She wants to publish the story. She thinks, everyone thinks, that if the truth about who you are comes out, Derek will be fired and the HR case goes away and—" "No," Marcus said. Destiny stopped. "I appreciate it," Marcus said. "I genuinely do. What you did took courage. But I won't be a part of a story that uses my military record as a weapon. But if I win this because of what I did 30 years ago," Marcus said, "then I haven't won anything. I've just traded one kind of power for another." He paused. "That's not how I was taught to operate." Destiny stared at him. "So, you're just going to let him win?" Marcus looked at her over the glasses. "I didn't say that," he said. That night, it appeared the story had resolved itself through other means. The video had now crossed 12 million views. The public pressure was enormous. 3 Hargrove executives had seen their personal LinkedIn profiles flooded with comments. The company's Glassdoor rating had dropped a full point in 24 hours. At 8 p.m. Thursday, Hargrove issued a brief corporate statement. "We are aware of videos circulating online depicting an incident at one of our facilities. We take workplace conduct extremely seriously, and an internal review is underway." By 9 p.m., Twitter was celebrating. "They're going to fire him. Derek Paulson is done." The company blinked. Marcus won. Destiny sat on her couch watching reactions scroll by, and she wanted to feel relief. But Thomas Reed had sent her a message 20 minutes ago that she couldn't stop reading. It said, "Grant Ellery, Derek's lawyer, just filed a defamation lawsuit. Not against the company. Against you personally. They're claiming the video was manipulated to remove context that shows Marcus was the aggressor. They have a witness prepared to testify to it." Destiny read it again. A witness prepared to testify that Marcus was the aggressor. She thought about Cody. She thought about Phil. And she felt the victory she had almost felt disappear completely. Because they weren't trying to fight the video. They were trying to destroy the person who filmed it. The lawsuit arrived at Destiny's apartment via email at 10:30 p.m. Thursday. She had never received a legal document before. She read it 4 times trying to understand it and understood only pieces. Defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The claimed damages were $340,000. Destiny made $16.40 an hour. She sat on her kitchen floor. She was 22 years old. She lived alone. Her mother was in Birmingham. Her savings account had $2,800 in it. She had no lawyer. She had never needed one. She called Thomas Reed at 10:45 p.m. He picked up on the second ring. "I saw it," he said before she spoke. "I'm already working on it. Don't panic." "Thomas, I can't." "I know. Listen to me. You did the right thing. Do you understand that? You did exactly the right thing, and now they're trying to make you pay for it. That's what they do. That's always what they do." His voice was steady, and she held on to it. "I have someone. A lawyer. Her name is Claire Voss. She does First Amendment and whistleblower defense. I'm texting you her number right now. It's 11 o'clock at night. She'll answer. Claire Voss answered on the third ring. She was 40 years old, Baltimore-based, and had the brisk, unsentimental manner of someone who had spent years in courtrooms deciding that efficiency was a form of kindness. She listened to Destiny for 8 minutes without interrupting. Then she said, "The lawsuit is a pressure tactic. It's designed to make you take the video down and go away. If you do that, it probably disappears. If you don't, it gets expensive and ugly before it gets better." "Can they win?" Destiny asked. A pause. "On the manipulation claim, only if they can prove you edited the video to misrepresent what happened." "Did you?" "No. I press record and I press stop." "Then they can't win on that. But they can make your life difficult for 18 months trying." Another pause. "Here's what I need to know. Is there anything else? Any other footage? Any witnesses who saw something different from what the video shows?" Destiny thought about Rhonda from data analytics, about the way Rhonda hadn't made eye contact with Derek since Tuesday. "Yes," she said. "I think so. Give me their names by morning," Claire said. "And Destiny, do not take the video down. Whatever you do tonight, don't touch it." But the worst news of the night hadn't arrived yet. At 1:17 a.m. Friday, a news story appeared on a local gossip and workplace news blog called the Hargrove Insider, an anonymous publication that had been a thorn in the company's side for years. The headline read, "Cafeteria Video Controversy. Source says footage was selectively edited." The article quoted a source with direct knowledge of the incident, claiming that the video began recording after Marcus Webb had used aggressive language toward Derek Paulson, and that the Trey incident was a response to a verbal threat. The article included a quote attributed to the anonymous source that said, "The man in the video has a history of intimidating behavior. His background makes him a danger in a workplace setting. The woman who posted the video knew this and chose to hide it." The article had no byline. It had no named sources. But by 6 a.m. Friday, it had been shared 40,000 times. And 3 of those shares came from verified accounts run by Hargrove's own corporate communications department. Destiny woke up Friday morning to 847 new notifications. Half of them were support. The other half were not. "You framed an innocent man. Delete the video. You're going to lose this lawsuit, and you deserve to." She stared at her ceiling. The countdown on her phone read, 8 hours, 34 minutes remaining. She didn't know what it was counting toward anymore. And then her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. She answered. "Destiny Charles?" said a voice. "Yes," she said. "My name is Marcus Webb," he said. "I think it's time we talked." Marcus Webb did not sound like a man whose reputation was being dismantled on the internet. He sounded like a man who had been awake for a while and had something specific to say. "I owe you an apology," he said. Destiny sat up in bed. "For what?" "For letting this go this far, without stepping in. I made a choice based on principle, and I didn't think far enough ahead about who else it would affect." A pause. "That's on me." "Marcus, you don't need to." "I do," he said. "Now, I need you to listen carefully because I'm going to tell you something, and then I'm going to tell you what to do with it. And the order of those two things matters." Destiny grabbed a notepad from her nightstand. "Hargrove's cafeteria has 6 security cameras," Marcus said. "The facilities team installed a 7th camera in the northwest corner of the room 8 months ago. It's not on the official security grid. It was installed at the request of the previous facilities director to monitor a vendor who had been suspected of inventory theft. The case was resolved. The camera was never decommissioned." Destiny stopped writing. "How do you know this?" "Because I'm a facilities consultant," Marcus said. "And the first thing I did when I arrived at this company was read 9 years of maintenance logs." Silence. "The 7th camera has a different angle than the official cameras," he continued. "It covers the northwest corner of the cafeteria, which is where my table was on Tuesday. The official cameras show a partial view of the incident. The 7th camera shows everything, including the 40 seconds before you started filming." Destiny's hand was shaking again. "Where's the footage stored?" she asked. "Local server. Building B, sublevel 1. I have access to that server as part of my facilities role." He paused. "I pulled the footage at 3 a.m. this morning. I've had it for 4 hours. Why didn't you? Because I needed to decide if I was willing to use it, he said quietly. I've spent my whole life believing that how you respond to provocation defines you more than the provocation itself. I watched Derek knock that tray on the floor, and I thought, let it go. Don't become what he wants you to become. A long pause. But, he said, there's a 22-year-old woman being sued for $340,000 for filming the truth. And that changes the calculation. Destiny had no words. The footage is 3 minutes and 12 seconds long, Marcus said. It shows Derek approaching the table. It shows him making the comments you didn't catch on your phone. It shows me asking him politely twice to walk away. It shows exactly what happened and exactly in what order. He paused. It also shows Cody and Phil laughing. Another pause. And it shows Patricia Huang eating lunch 15 feet away. Destiny's jaw dropped. She was there, Marcus said. She saw the whole thing. The silence stretched. Send it to Claire Voss, Destiny said finally. Already done, Marcus said. 12 minutes ago. She's already called Grant Ellery. I imagine Derek Paulson is about to have a very different Friday morning than he planned. He paused one more time. Destiny. Yeah. Thank you for not taking the video down. Grant Ellery received Claire Voss's email at 6:22 a.m. Friday. He read it twice. Then he called Derek. The call lasted 4 minutes. Those who knew Grant Ellery professionally said that he was almost never rattled. He had a courtroom manner that was famously unshakable, slow, deliberate, built for endurance. He was rattled. Derek. He said, I need you to tell me right now whether there is any security footage in that cafeteria beyond what was publicly released. Derek said he didn't know anything about a seventh camera. There is one, Grant said, and Marcus Webb has the footage from it, and he has sent it to opposing counsel. Silence on the line. How bad is it? Derek asked. Grant chose his words carefully. It is comprehensive, he said. More silence. Can we get ahead of it? Derek. The footage shows Patricia Huang seated within viewing distance of the incident. She has already been contacted by Claire Voss. She is prepared to provide a witness statement. The silence this time was different. It was a silence of a very intelligent man doing very fast arithmetic and arriving at a number he didn't want to see. What are my options? Derek said. You could fight it, Grant said, and you would lose, publicly on the record, with a camera angle that removes every element of your defense. Or, he paused, you could call Patricia Huang before she calls you. Today, before 9 a.m. Patricia Huang had been awake since 5 a.m. She had made the decision at 5:47 a.m. that she had been circling for 3 days. She had been there. She had seen everything. And she had gone back to her office and done paperwork, while a man she had just watched be publicly humiliated came to sit across from her and politely declined to defend himself. That was going to stop. At 8:15 a.m. Friday, Patricia Huang walked into the office of Hargrove's chief people officer, a man named David Corr, and placed 3 documents on his desk. The first was a formal witness statement describing, in detail, what she had personally observed in the cafeteria on Tuesday, November 14th. The second was a timeline of Derek Paulson's HR activity over the preceding 15 years. 8 complaints filed against colleagues, 3 settlements reached, 2 employees whose sudden departures had never been investigated. The third was her resignation letter, effective immediately. She had written it the night before, just in case. I'm not going to resign, she told David Corr. I'm giving you that letter to show you I'm serious. Either Derek Paulson is terminated today before noon, or I submit it, and then I speak to Priya Anand at the American Record. David Corr looked at the 3 documents. He picked up his phone. At 10:30 a.m. Friday, Derek Paulson was called into a meeting with David Corr and 2 members of Hargrove's legal team. He brought Grant Ellery. It didn't help. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. At the end of it, Derek signed a separation agreement. The terms were confidential. He was walked to his desk by HR, given a box for his personal items, and escorted to the elevator. Cody watched from across the floor. Phil did not look up from his computer, but the day was not over. At 11 a.m., Priya Anand published her story in the American Record. It was not the story about Marcus's military record. He had asked her not to write that story. She had respected the request. Instead, it was a story about Derek Paulson's 15-year pattern of workplace manipulation. It named the employees he had pushed out. It quoted two of them on record for the first time because they had finally felt safe enough to speak. It described the anonymous blog post and its links to Hargrove's corporate communications accounts. It included the full account of the HR process, the false complaint, the witness who had seen everything, the seventh camera. And it ended with 3 paragraphs about Destiny Charles, about a 22-year-old cafeteria worker who had pressed record on instinct, held on through a lawsuit, a smear campaign, and a sleepless night, and had not let go. The story was shared 2 million times in 6 hours. The defamation lawsuit against Destiny was withdrawn at 2:17 p.m. She was sitting in her car in the Hargrove parking lot when the notification came through from Claire Voss. She read it. She put the phone down. She looked out the windshield at the gray November sky, and for the first time in 4 days, she cried. Not because she was sad, because she had been so tightly wound for so long that the unwinding felt like breaking. Even when it was good, there was a knock on the passenger window. She looked over. Marcus Webb was standing outside her car, hands in the pockets of his jacket, waiting. She unlocked the door. He got in. They sat quietly for a moment. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," she said honestly. He nodded. "That's a reasonable answer." A pause. "Marcus," she said, "why did you help me? After everything, you didn't want any of this. You could have just let it go. You said yourself." "I said how you respond to provocation defines you," he said. "That goes both ways." He looked out the windshield. Watching someone be punished for doing the right thing and doing nothing about it. That would have defined me too, just differently. Destiny thought about that. "Is that what you taught them?" she asked. "The SEALs?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I taught them that strength without purpose is just noise," he said, "and that the most important decisions you'll ever make are the ones nobody's watching." He looked at her. "Somebody was watching," she said. He almost smiled. "Somebody was watching," he agreed. Derek Paulson did not disappear. That was the part people expected. The clean erasure, the villain exiled to permanent obscurity. It didn't work that way. He was 42 days without work before he took a consulting role at a smaller firm in a different city. He was quieter there, whether from wisdom or survival instinct. Nobody could say. Some people change. Some people just change addresses. The 2 employees he had forced out of Hargrove, a project manager named Sandra Osei and an analyst named Kevin Tran, were both contacted by Hargrove's new leadership and offered reinstatement with back compensation. Sandra returned. Kevin had already built something better in the time away and didn't. Patricia Huang stayed. David Core gave her an expanded role and promised, in writing, that the HR department would now report directly to the board. She held him to it. Destiny Charles was offered promotion at Hargrove, a coordination role in facilities management that paid nearly twice what she had been making. She took it. She also started a part-time journalism course at the community college 2 evenings a week. Marcus Webb completed his consulting contract at Hargrove in February, 2 months later than planned because the facilities audit turned out to be considerably more complicated than originally estimated. On his last day, he ate lunch in the cafeteria alone, as he always had. He had a tray of rice and chicken. He read a paperback novel. Nobody knocked it over. When he stood to leave, Destiny was at the serving counter. She had started bringing him an extra cup of coffee every Tuesday. Not because she had been asked to, but because she wanted to. She slid it across the counter. He picked it up. "Good luck," she said. He looked at her for a moment. "You're going to be extraordinary," he said. He walked out of the cafeteria. He never looked back. Not because he didn't care, but because men like Marcus Webb had learned a long time ago that the most important direction is always forward. Some people are tested by fire. The ones who pass don't become harder. They become clearer.